Hey everybody, Jeffrey Powers here, and we got Alastair, and this is Build Day TV, and this is episode 6B, connecting your VPC to an on-premises in physical LAN type area. Hey everybody, Jeffrey Powers here, and of course, if you haven't seen the first part of this 6A, because this is 6B. If you haven't seen 6A, you got to go to the playlist and check it out. Alastair explains everything about what's happening here. He even talks about a cool little plaque towards the end of the video. You definitely want to find out what AWS does with your customer service and your dollars on there. And of course, this is a part of a bigger series, Build Day TV, and we'll be doing more than just AWS in the coming weeks. We've got a couple other cool projects coming for. We kind of leaked a little bit out in the last couple episodes. So, but Alastair, let us know, what are we doing and in this video?
So this video carries on, Jeffrey, from as you described. We did the theory piece where we talked about how we link together two networks. So here I'm on the right-hand side in the Build Day Live data center here.
Build Day Live network, nice.
So I have my on-premises network, and I have a VPC for the Al's Pizza website. And what we're going to do is establish a connection between them. So we're going to stand up a virtual gateway, set up a couple of VPN endpoints on it, and then define that router that connects back to on-premises. I'm going to stand up a VPN that allows me to access from my on-premises network here in the Build Day Live data center out to our virtual private cloud, our AWS-based data center.
Okay.
So at the end of this, I should be able to access machines that are inside that pizza VPC using their private IP addresses rather than having to go over the internet and use the public ones.
So if we're sticking to the pizza model here, this would end up being corporate, and corporate could now collect some data as to how many pizzas are being sold or how many customers are at the website, things like that.
Yeah, and you know, if that pizza VPC is for my local pizza store here in Tauranga in New Zealand, maybe the time recording system is in there, and that time recording information comes back to corporate so that the payroll can actually be run.
Okay.
That kind of thing goes on.
Oh yeah, because we all need to get paid. Absolutely.
Oh, we like to get paid.
All right. Let's get paid.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we have. In our AWS Management Console, we've got our virtual private cloud. So we have our Pizza Sydney virtual private cloud in here. Come on, internet connection. And it's the same Pizza Sydney scenario that I've been using right throughout. So it's a 10.64 IP address ranges inside there. And we have some subnets in here for our Pizza Sydney subnets. We have route tables. It's exactly what you've seen before.
Okay.
Inside there, we have some EC2 instances running. So if we look at the EC2 console, we'll see some pizza web servers in there. So a couple of pizza web servers. They're living inside that 10.64 IP address range. You can see down the bottom here, 10.64. But they don't have any public IP addresses on those. Pizza web servers, you'll remember, are behind a load balancer, and so they don't need public IP addresses. But what I do have is a jump host here. So most of the time I manage my environment by connecting in over the internet onto this jump host and then going to the web servers from there. But I want to switch that so that I've got direct access from on-premises.
Okay.
So if we pop back into the VPC, the first step we needed to do to establish a VPN into this and to establish any private site connectivity beyond AWS is to create a virtual private gateway, or VGW. Simple process to do it. You say, I would like to create a virtual private gateway. I'm going to call this one Pizza Gateway and create the virtual gateway. Quick and easy to create the gateway. And you'll notice in the state, it's got a big red detached button symbol on it. Let's attach it to something.
Okay.
Drop down the menu and it says attach to VPC. Cool. Which VPC do I want to attach it to? I'll attach it to my Pizza Sydney VPC. Seems like a good idea.
Sounds good to me, yeah.
And now we've attached our virtual gateway, or we are attaching our virtual gateway. Let's refresh. There we go. It's now attached to my VPC. That's all we need to do for the virtual gateway to make it available in our VPC.
Wow. Straightforward.
That piece is straightforward. Now, before any network traffic is going to go across this pizza gateway, we need to change the route tables on our VPC.
Okay.
So let's take a look at the route tables. I have 3 route tables on my VPC called pizza. You know, let's simplify this view and let's limit things to just showing us the Pizza Sydney VPC, so we don't need to see the default one. So I've got 3 route tables that are actually in use. Let's take a look at this one. This is the route table for the public side, and this is attached to the 2 public side subnets. And so its route table says it's got this last resort, 0000 goes to the internet gateway. Right, 1064, everything inside the VPC is easy to reach. You don't need to ask anything else. But if you have no idea where to send the traffic, send it to the internet gateway. Well, I need to add a route to say, go to the virtual gateway to reach this network range. So I do this by adding a route table in here and specifying the CIDR range that the virtual gateway will provide access to. Now, my on-premises network is part of the IP address range that is 192.168. And I'm going to specify this /16, all of the possible 192.168 addresses you should reach through the virtual gateway.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to use that entire range for my VPN connection back to here, because maybe I'll create a VPN connection to Jeff's Geekazine data center.
I have a data center, yes.
And that the Geekazine data center also uses a 192.168 range. So I'm going to have the whole lot go through the same, here it is at the bottom, virtual private gateway called Pizza Gateway. Okay, so this says if you need to reach anything on 192.168, you go to the virtual gateway and let the virtual gateway work out where to send the traffic. Okay, so I've done that now for the public subnet. And that means my jump host now has a route to get to on-premises. But I haven't done it for the 2 private subnets, so I should probably do that too.
Okay.
Get a route table on here. You can tell they're private subnets because the target of their last resort route is a NAT gateway. So we'll go in here and do the same thing, 168.0.0/16, accessible through the virtual private gateway called Pizza Gateway. That's one of the 2 private route tables. And then the second one, .168.0.0/16, virtual private gateway called Pizza Gateway. Okay. So that's all 3 of my route tables. And now, assuming they've refreshed, that one didn't take. I must have held my mouth wrong as I typed that one in. That one stay? Okay.
Here we go.
Let's check again that they've all 3 route tables have 3 different subnet definitions. Okay. So now my route tables are updated to use the virtual gateway. The next thing I need to do is create a customer gateway. This is the thing that references my on-premises router.
Okay.
So I create a customer gateway. This one is going to be called Build Day NZ. Use dynamic routing for this. Now, I talked in the previous video about using static or dynamic routing and how dynamic routing is just simpler because you don't have to manually define things. You can use static routing, but I have an on-premises router that supports BGP, so I'm going to use that. And then I need my IP address, the public IP address of my router. And I paste in here the public IP address of my router here in my network. And that's all I need to do. I'm not using a certificate for authentication. I'm going to use pre-shared keys. We go, all good, created that customer gateway. So now I have something in AWS that refers to my on-premises router for this location. So I have a virtual gateway that's going to allow connectivity. I have the definition of my customer gateway. Now I need to create a site-to-site VPN to link those two things together. So let's create a VPN connection.
Awesome. Can't wait.
So this is going to be called Pizza Sydney Build Day NZ, and it's going to go through a virtual private gateway. There you go, Pizza Gateway. It's going to go to a customer gateway that we've already defined called Build Day NZ. And it's going to use dynamic routing, and we don't need to configure anything else in here. We can simply hit Create VPN Connection. Now, at this point, AWS is creating those two endpoints for the VPN. And we get two VPN tunnels with our VPN connection. And we can see that here in the Tunnel Details tab, is that there are two IP addresses, and you can see the outside IP addresses. Those are two public IP addresses that our VPN connection can come through to.
Okay.
So this is going to take a while to provision out. There's actually some compute instances being provisioned under this, and this is why you pay per hour for this VPN configuration to exist. While it's provisioning, though, we can configure our on-premises router, and we do this by doing the download configuration here.
All right.
And it says, what vendor and model and version of router do you have on premises? And so I can get a configuration for a Cisco Systems, a Checkpoint, a Sonic Wall, a Palo Alto, a variety of different routers, some of them very high-end, some of them more medium business routers. But I can get template configuration out of that.
What if it's not on the list?
Which one's not on the list?
No, what if it's not on the, what if you're...
Oh, if it's not on the list, there is a generic item in here, which will just tell you all of the configuration items that you would put in. If it's not on the list, it's quite likely that you're configuring it through a web interface, and that you pull down the generic definition, and it says, in the field called pre-shared key, place this text.
Okay.
In the field called tunnel endpoint, place this IP address. But because I know that the router I have runs the Viata routing engine, I am just going to grab the Viata configuration and download that directly.
Okay.
And then I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code so you can see what it looks like.
If you have a generic, let's say you have a generic router and you put all that information, is there a possibility that your connection won't be made and you can't do this?
It is entirely possible that a non-supported router doesn't actually provide the functionality that we need. Now, this is a very standard type of IPsec VPN.
Okay.
And one of the things we can see in here, if we take a look at the specifics of each tunnel, we better make sure this is all provisioned before I try and edit it. In the actual tunnel details itself, we can see some information in here about the phase 1 and phase 2 configuration of the IPsec. We can see about the support for particular IKE versions, different Diffie-Hellman groups for agreeing the actual keys that are used for transfer. There's a lot of stuff that can be configured in here.
Okay.
So you absolutely can tune this side. The default is to actually be really open and permissive and allow a whole lot of different cipher suites, so 128-bit or 256-bit RSA encryption for the bulk transfer, those kinds of things. It's very compatible in its standard configuration.
Okay.
So typically when you're changing these configurations, it's because you want to be more restrictive, because you have a security regime that requires you to be more restrictive.
Yeah. All right.
So here's the config file that I have for the VPN for my environment for Viata. And it literally has the command line that you use to set up the various stages. So in here, we can see the pre-shared key for this particular VPN for my IP address to connect to this particular VPN endpoint on AWS. And we've got the first step here of the IKE, the initial key exchange. Then below that is the IPsec configuration, where it says here are all the things you need to configure on the router to get it to work. Then there is the tunnel configuration for actually IP addresses that are used within that IPsec section. And then there is a second tunnel configuration below, because we have those two endpoints. So there is quite literally a set of commands that you can paste into the management console on your router and have this work.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to do. And I think in the playback, Jeffrey, we'll just speed this up because nobody needs to see me copy and pasting these commands.
Absolutely. All right, that was quick.
It was. You know, copy and paste of text files is something that should pass fairly quickly. And as you can see, I've committed that change and BGP is now stood up and I've got a VPN connection on my router now.
That was basically about 4 different copy pastes, right?
Yeah, so if we look back in here, there's a whole bunch of stuff that has an exclamation mark at the beginning that is comments. And I could have just copied and pasted the whole dang lot in. But I know that my router throws complaints. It doesn't recognize those shrieks as being comments. And so it'd throw a bunch of errors. And I don't like those cosmetic errors. I like errors that are shown to actually mean something's gone wrong.
Absolutely.
So I just copied and pasted each of the groups that wasn't commented. I could have just deleted out all of the comments and pasted it as one bunch too.
Okay.
And of course, once you've done this 3 or 4 times, you know that the configuration matches up to your router and you don't get quite so concerned about it.
Okay. So it's basically a preference thing.
Yeah. So if we pop back now into the console, hopefully we will find that our VPN is available. And we can see that both connections are currently showing down and IPsec down. IPsec will take a little while to stand up. So again, through the magic of video editing, Jeffrey is going to take away the waiting time and I'll keep refreshing until it says something is working. And it only took a couple of minutes and now you can see that tunnel number 1, and I only configured tunnel number 1. Tunnel number 1 is showing a status of up and in green, and that's got to be a good thing.
Okay.
So it's got one route, it knows how to get back to my own premises.
So we don't need both of them. Tunnel 2 is just a redundancy thing, right?
So tunnel 2 is about redundancy, and if you're using this in production, you want redundancy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But just for demo and to speed up the demo time, I'm just standing up the one tunnel.
Okay.
So what we should find then is that I can get to the EC2 instance that is my jump host directly from on premises. So let's take a look at my jump host, because I know I can SSH to it through its public IP address, but right now I want to connect to it through its private IP address.
Okay.
So its private IP address is this one down here, 1064.198. And I'm still going to use the connect information that's provided here, but I'm not going to include the IP address. This -i in here is to use a key pair that I already have. This is one of the things when you create an EC2 instance, you say the pre-configured authentication uses a key pair, and I attest that I have this particular PEM, this key pair file.
Okay. Just so we're clarifying, so people see that you're copying up until after the ampersand, or not the ampersand, the @ symbol.
Yeah. So it's an SSH command, and I'm on a Mac, so it's like a Linux system. It's already got SSH installed. The procedure, if you're using a Windows machine using PuTTY, is a little more complex, and it's much easier this way.
Okay.
But the -i says I'm using this configuration file, and then before the @sand, the ampersand in there, sorry, the @sand, @ symbol is the user ID that I'm logging onto, and after the @ symbol is the computer that I want to log onto. Okay. So this is the way that the command is configured. So I'll grab that, I'll pop back into my terminal here. So I am on my laptop here, and I am going to run this SSH to 10.64.1. Now I've forgotten, was it 98? Right, so the private IP address is this. In fact, I should have just copied it. Gone back into my terminal here and pasted it in there. So this is going over directly to the 1064, not to the public IP address.
Okay.
And because the firewall rules and the routing table are set up, I immediately then get prompted with, do you want to accept this SSH fingerprint for this EC2 instance's SSH server? And I say yes, and look at that. I've got directly from my computer over that VPN connection to my jump host.
Okay.
You can see that it's saying that I'm EC2 user at 1064.198, which is the IP address of this EC2 instance.
Nice.
Nice. So now I could actually shift my jump host from being in a public subnet where it's accessible from the internet. I could put it in a private subnet where it's only accessible from on-premises. And that gives me a more secure configuration than if it was sitting in the public subnet.
Okay. Let's
Cool.
do it.
Well, we have a VPN up. We can connect over the private side. Seems fun. That's essentially what we set up in not terribly many minutes. You know, I think the longest time was waiting for the VPN connection to actually be available.
Yeah.
Everything else was a couple of runs through a wizard. So we've connected our on-premises network here in the Build Day Live New Zealand network to the VPC for our public-facing website.
Okay.
You look like you feel that we've missed something because it was so simple.
No. Well, I'm guessing that even though it is simple, you're doing this a lot. This was just for one instance, so you're probably doing this several times, and connecting and disconnecting in some cases. So it needs to be simple.
Yeah, so as you say, is the individual connection between this VPC and this on-premises network was simple. But when we've got lots of VPCs or lots of on-premises networks, then things start to get complex.
Okay.
Yeah, the simple use case is simple. This is good because then the more complex use case might actually be manageable.
All right.
But yes, you can see the number of pieces that are in here that this stuff works and is useful, but scaling it could get to be challenging. Cool, well, that's all I wanted to cover in this hands-on. We've connected our VPC to our on-premises network and verified that connectivity works.
All right. Then the question is, what's next?
Well, you know, I've talked quite a bit about Transit Gateway as the way to simplify all of that relationships between objects as we connect together. So I think I'm going to look at building a transit gateway and showing how you could connect multiple VPCs together and use just a single VPN connection back to your on-premises environment to connect to those multiple VPCs and to connect the multiple VPCs to one another. So rather than having lots of complex VPC peering connections and multiple VPN connections, we have a much simpler configuration through Transit Gateway.
Awesome. Although I like Pizza Gateway because, you know, pizza is a great gateway for it.
You know, we may have to call our Transit Gateway the Pizza Gateway.
The Pizza Gateway, yeah, absolutely. So
pizza is the gateway food.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, I've got to make myself a pizza. So thanks a lot to Alastair for explaining this. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but you know, hey, that's what these videos are for. So I can go back and watch it again and actually do the hands-on along with it. You hit the pause button, you hit the play button, you hit the pause button, do a few tests, run them up and see what you can put together. If you have any questions, that's what the comments area is for, to ask questions. We're going to be doing a Q&A session in a couple weeks for the last 6 series episodes that we've just done. So if you have any questions in those at that time, feel free to ask them in the comments, and we'll answer them down the road. Also, remember to subscribe, like, and comment. The bell notification will let you know when we come on next. We do these videos to premiere on Sunday nights at about 5 p.m. Eastern time. So you can set your clock to that as we go. And of course, we're gonna continue on with AWS for the next couple weeks, but we do have some other projects that we're starting to ramp up and bring into the fold. So plus some other videos that might start showing up on the Build Day TV channel, because this is all about education. This is all about learning. So feel free to subscribe and like and comment, and we'll see you next week. So thanks a lot, Alastair, for your time and your knowledge.
Thanks, Jeffrey. This was fun.
Absolutely. So, and we'll see you next week as we go to the next episode. You guys take care.